I'm pleased to join you today at this national workshop, which brings together education leaders, youth representatives, civil society, and development partners to address one of the most pressing challenges of our time: how we produce, consume, and manage resources, particularly food. I would like to thank the Global Gateway Strategy of the European Union, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and all partners for their support of the Circular Project. This initiative aligns closely with the government's vision to make education relevant, future-oriented, and responsive to national development priorities. As a government, one of our key priorities is to orient education towards real-life challenges, equipping learners not only with knowledge, but also with critical thinking, practical skills, and a sense of social responsibility. In that sense, I just want to touch on three extremely important principles based on which we are planning our education reforms, which I think are hugely relevant to the conversation we are having today. One is the concept of lifelong learning. I think this was mentioned in your previous speech as well. For us, we consider education not as something that is relevant to a particular age group or development period, but something that all of us have to engage in continuously. So this idea of lifelong learning, where learning becomes part of your life, part of how you cope with the changes that you go through, whether as a child or as an adult. This is why we are focused also on building an education system that encourages this system, not only in terms of content, but in terms of structure, which will enable learners to move in and out of an education system more easily. So that it's linked to your life, it's linked to your work, it's linked to your responsibilities as a citizen. The other important consideration we want to inculcate in our education system is the idea of learning to learn. This is the big shift that we really want to make. That education is not just about content delivery, it is about equipping people with the passion to learn and the desire to learn and the skills required to learn. And this becomes even more important in this day and age where, as we know, content is easily available, facts are easily accessible, but being able to distill which content, which information is actually authentic, useful, properly sourced, all of this becomes critically important in this day and age. And the idea that learning does not take place only in the classroom or in particular settings, but that learning can take place in different settings through different experiences. And that one of the most important dispositions we can have is one that encourages curiosity and the desire to know something and to know something properly. And that with that desire comes also a commitment to some kind of discipline, to not just look at something superficially, but to look at something thoroughly and to look at something in depth. So this idea of this skill or this disposition that we want to really instill through our education reform is that commitment to learn, the passion to learn, and the curiosity that will drive learning. This is the shift we want to make. And the other most important thing, and I think this is also relevant here, is that education is not just about individual mobility or making a success of your life or simply acquiring the skills for a job. Yes, those are important. Those are not things to be taken lightly. All of us need to live. All of us have dreams, personal aspirations. All of that is extremely crucial and important, and education must equip people with those skills. But education has a responsibility that goes beyond the individual. And that is the transformative potential of an educated society. A society where citizens are equipped with the skills, with the attitudes that make them feel a sense of belonging, sense of shared responsibility, sense of commitment to each other and to the environment. And I think these are really important for the conversation we are having today, because if we are to think about circular economy, particularly in the food sector, that does require a sensitivity towards others, sensitivity towards an environment, and a huge sense of social and civic responsibility. And this is one of the most powerful things that a good education system can deliver, and this is what we are once again committed to. Listening to you speak, I'm throwing away my prepared speech. I hope that's all right. Listening to you speak, I was actually reminded of my grandmother. I think she passed on many years ago. She was an expert on the circular economy when it comes to food waste. I remember as children, as grandchildren, sitting with her in the kitchen, around the kitchen table, helping her turn all kinds of things that we would have thrown away into jams, chutneys, juices. We were, as children, given the responsibility of doing the chopping and the cleaning and all of that. Nothing did she throw away. I remember her making a wonderful stewed fruit out of passion fruit skin. Right? Because passion fruit skin was, after you make the juice, you use the passion fruit to make something else. I grew up in the 70s and 80s where supermarkets weren't as readily accessible or available as they are now, and where, delicacies like stewed fruits or prunes and peaches were sort of luxuries. But I remember my grandmother's stewed passion fruit skins, which were a good substitute for peaches. Lovely to eat with her homemade ice cream. I don't know if there are maybe people of my age group in this room. In those days, in the 70s and 80s, milk was delivered by the Elephant House milkman, who would come with the bottles. You left the bottle out in the morning and the bottle would be replaced. And the bottles had a foil top, different colors, pink, purple, green, yellow, those golden tops. My grandmother collected those tops, and she would make decorations to hang around the house with those tops, especially for the windows, so they would dangle along the windows. Nothing was thrown. Every food, and we were taught at an early age, you serve only what you eat, and you do not serve anything more. You finish your plate, you clean your plate, and you do not get up from the table till you finish everything that you served onto the plate. We were taught that in the kitchen, especially as girls, because of course we were socialized into thinking our primary role was in the kitchen, that when you go marketing, you go with a list. You buy what is available, you bring it back, and then you arrange the kitchen so that you use what you brought, what was left first, and you push the new stuff to the back so that you consume, you don't waste anything. I find myself doing this even today, and I'm thinking what a profound influence my grandmother and my mother had. We cursed her, we complained, we really fidgeted as young children when we were asked to do these things, but I can feel that training in how I organize my kitchen as well. But what I want to point out here is that this circular economy, this food waste, takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of time. It's necessary, it's important, but there's labor involved. And you have to have time for this labor. In the 70s and 80s, my grandmother lived in the kind of situation where she had the time to do this, where the conditions of life were very different, where food making, food processing was very much an activity on which you invested time, and that was okay. But today, I'm not sure that those conditions exist in quite the same way, and that's, I think, the challenge we have to face. So even though I grew up with women who dinned this idea of not wasting into my head, I find myself taking those shortcuts and invariably feeling guilty about it because it's so ingrained. But I think this is the experience for many of us. So I think we also need to look not just at the information and the skills necessary for this, but creating the conditions that enable us to actually follow through with this. And this is what is necessary. This is where I think we really have to understand the time, the labor that is involved in care work, in food preparation, in the kitchen, and that this burden is often almost taken by women who today are dealing with multiple responsibilities and rushing from one task to the other, and often having to take shortcuts which are not very conducive to maintaining this kind of system that is so essential for our world and for responsible living. So we really need to look at those conditions and to look at the ways in which we can enable these practices in our homes and lives. I was handed this, I think I've left it behind, this lovely pamphlet about what's in the education system, what's promoted in the education system, and it talks about how you serve your plate of food and how you should organize your refrigerator. And when I saw that, I was thinking, good God, if I look at my fridge today, I am sure to find a dried up half lime, a few dried up chilies, half a tomato, something that I've just tucked away into the fridge and forgotten about because I just don't have the time to clean my fridge and because I don't have the time to plan my meals the way I would usually have done. Right? I think looking into any refrigerator in a Sri Lankan home, you will find this. Bits of grated coconut, bits of chili, half a tomato, a few dried up limes. Any Sri Lankan fridge, I can assure you, you will find these items. Right? Because we simply do not any longer have the same kind of time to plan our meals or our kitchens or our refrigerators in the way that we should. So I think these are things that we really need to talk about. These are things we really need. This is what we need to bring into our education, but really look at the conditions that prevent us from doing this. We can't go back to the 70s and 80s where time is a luxury and where we all had time for, sitting around the kitchen table and gathering and doing these things together. But we need to find other ways also in which we can do this, and we really need to understand that environmentally sensitive and friendly and responsible ways of doing things requires work, requires labor, and we must make sure that labor is fairly distributed within the household so that it's not always the grandmothers and mothers who are then and the daughters and the wives who are burdened with this responsibility. This is also something that I think we really need to take into account. So I can assure you these are really important principles and lessons for us to think about in our education system. But it's not just by introducing a module or a lesson in the classroom. It's again a disposition that we need to encourage, and practices that we bring into our lives, and practices that become part of our everyday, and a sense of living in this world, and a sense of responsibility that we need to inculcate. So I encourage all of you to think about these things, move beyond the statements and the rhetoric to actually how do we make this happen in our lives and make this have an impact on our lives. So thank you, all of you. Maybe I should go back to my notes and see whether I left out something I should have probably said. But thank you, all of you, for your contribution and your commitment to this cause. It's extremely important. It's extremely important, and I think we are in a, even the tourism sector, our hotel industry needs to take these things into account. So this is not something we can afford to ignore. Food security is going to be one of, and nutrition, we talked about this yesterday, Emma, is something that is critical for the well-being of our citizens. So thank you again for this initiative, and you can be assured of the full support of our government, and particularly the Ministry of Education in this effort. Thank you so much.